Welcome to West Virginia Sports Connection. My name is Tracy Abdallah, and I am your host, and we are coming to you from Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill in beautiful downtown Charleston, West Virginia. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce you to my co-host. He is a 12-year NFL veteran for the Minnesota Vikings, three-time All-Pro, named one of the top 50 greatest Minnesota Vikings of all time. And he happens to be my friend, Carl Lee. Carl, thanks for coming down, helping us put this show together, and welcome, my man.
No problem, man. I'm enjoying it. I can't wait to get it going.
We've talked about this for quite some time. You and I possibly doing the show, and here we are, and we've finally trying to make it a reality. So let's just get right to it. I want to jump into West Virginia high school football. It's right around the corner, and there's three teams in the capital city that I think we can talk about today. It's Capital, George Washington, and South Charleston, all of whom have commitments from Division I schools. But I think we start off first with Capital High, and we start off, obviously, if you're talking about them, you're talking about their quarterback, Kerry Martin Jr. This guy, I mean, he's got like 12, 13, 15 offers already from Division I schools. Have you seen this guy play, and what do you think about it?
I have seen him play, and the problem, I'll say, for the other teams, including the other two that you mentioned, is that this guy has the real ability. I mean, this is a guy that can play. And so he's going to be a challenge for most people to try to handle. And, you know, if I'm coaching against him, I'm going to try to make him run the football and not throw it. Or I'm going to do one or the other, because I can also try to make him throw it, you know, and not beat me with his legs. So it's going to be a challenge for any team, and Capital's full of athletes all the time. So, you know, it's one of those kind of things. Can you match up with them? And they've got this big time player to lead that whole football team. So I think it's going to be a challenge for a lot of teams.
Well, you're a former coach, and I mean, you can impart those things to your players, and you can say, we need to stop the run, or we need to stop him from throwing the ball. But let's say, you know, they've done everything that you asked them to do, and then this guy just breaks everything down, and he bolts for a 50-yard touchdown. What do you say to your guys? How do you come back from that?
Well, again, as my coaching time, what I try to do is whatever you did, Tracy, I wanted to stop that. If you beat me doing something else, I'm fine with that. And I think this is a situation where you've got to figure out the run or the pass, what's his best asset. Let's take that away and force him into beating you somewhere else. And the key also is not to let anybody else beat you. You know, you have to make this guy beat you, because you're not going to be able to take him out of the game. He's just going to be that much better than everybody else.
As a coach, that's got to make you pull your hair out. I mean, you can game plan, and you've got maybe even you'd say the perfect game plan, and your players are executing, and then again, you know, it just breaks down. So when that happens, you know, how do you as a coach look at your players and say, look, you know, we tried this, we tried that. What do you tell them to go out there for the next series?
To be honest, it's really more of trying to convince them of how good that player is. Because, you know, your team, players have a tendency in sports to have an ego, and until you get on the field with someone, you really don't know. I'll give you an example. Take you way back to 1979, playing in the North-South football game. There was a guy, kind of average old guy out in Pineville, West Virginia, who committed to Penn State. That was a double-A guy. I was a triple-A guy. And so when he came to camp, he had missed a couple of days, and even though he had to go get the O.J. Simpson Award for the best running back in the nation, I wanted to size him up and kind of see what he was like. And Tracy, it took like the first time he touched the ball for me to realize, wait a minute, this is the best player I've ever been on the field with. All the dynamics that he had in running, you know, tall sweep, I'm trying to come down in the alley, I was playing safety, and all of a sudden I look up and this guy's beat the angle. He's like already out of the angle, and I was like, that's never happened. And so however good I thought I was, he was much better. And so a lot of times it's hard for guys to look on tape and to think that that team's going to be as good, or that particular player is going to be that good. Once they get on the field, it's too late, you know? And that's the hardest part, is to get them convinced on the front end so that they play hard. Once they play hard, that's all you got. If that guy beats you, then you just live with it. But you do want them to be ready and understand how good this guy is.
The guy you're talking about is
Kurt Warner.
Kurt Warner. The name was escaping me, and I was wanting to say Kurt Warner. I'm like, wait a minute, not the quarterback. I said, is it Kurt Warner? I got all confused, but when you saw him, I mean, you obviously didn't hear much about him, and I mean, when he turned that corner and what went through your mind when that happened?
I don't even know what kind of an analogy to draw to this, but I was a Robert Alexander fan who came through. I followed him through the South Charleston era from youth football to junior high to high school. So I was a huge fan of Robert Alexander, who also won that award. So I didn't want to believe this guy was that good, and I can remember it almost as if it was earlier today. I was coming down the alley, and I was coming down pretty hard because there's the ego involved. Now I'm AAA, he's AA. He's chasing all of my heroes' records. I want to show him that there's a guy on this team that can match him. And I'm running, coming down the alley, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay, I think I got an angle. Okay, that angle looked like it's getting away from me, and next thing I know, he's gone. Me and a buddy of mine, Eddie Ray Dias, who's passed away, we were sitting and talking about it in the room that night, and I said, man, I don't know if I've seen anybody ever. I don't think I've been on the field with anybody as fast and as elusive and seemingly doing it effortless. I mean, his running was like, that perfect golf swing that looks like they're not even swinging. And it was amazing because you just could not stop wanting to look at it.
I remember watching him at Penn State and then with Seattle, and he did. It looked like he just was gliding.
And people forget the quality of athletes that have come through the state of West Virginia and the number of players who've gone on to college, gone on to the pros and played well, not just okay, but well. I mean, if Kurt doesn't get hurt, he's going to have a great football career in the NFL.
That's a shame when that happens. All right, so that's what you do when you deal with somebody like Kerry, and you know he's going to run and you know he's going to pass. I want to talk about one of their rivals, George Washington, and I want to talk about specifically their senior quarterback, Grant Wells. This guy's already committed, near and dear to your heart, he's committed to Marshall, your alma mater, and this guy, he seems to be, I don't know how Marshall does it. They find these quarterbacks, right? They can just throw it all over the place. They don't seem to be highly touted, and then all of a sudden they come on and sometimes they're All-Americans, sometimes they're first-round draft picks. What do you know about this guy?
I've seen him play, and I've talked to Coach Edwards even about him. There were big-time schools. The thought was big-time schools were going to come. But for whatever reason, there just didn't seem to be – there was something that kind of threw them off. And it could be he can run the football, but I don't think he's athletic. So – I think, when you run and you throw.
He's not a Kerry Martin type.
No, he's not. But he can run. He still presents the challenge of a run. He's not necessarily looking to, throws the ball well. But I think at that D1 level, and I think football as a whole is changing. It's changing. The college game is changing the pro game. You want these athletes at that quarterback position. And I think the problem with him is they just couldn't find enough athleticism in him to offer him on the big level. Now, at Marshall, I think that's going to work for him. I think that, he can get there. I don't see him breaking into a lineup, could even be a red shirt, and he could be 1 year away. But I think he's a guy that can throw the ball around comfortably. He's comfortable in throwing the ball, and he can get out of the pocket time to time.
Does he fit right into Doc Holliday's system?
I'm not really even sure yet what Doc Holliday's system, what fit. I think what happens
to be able to tailor it to whoever
yes,
he needs.
He really does.
That's the mark of a good coach.
Absolutely. I think he recruits what he wants, but sometimes he can also find, he's a great recruiter, so he can find these guys and start to think, maybe I can make this happen. Even if he's going to get you as a guy who could be a backup, whatever the case may be, he's fitting the pieces in, and that's one of the things that I truly like about Doc is he knows how to fit pieces in and what he wants to do them for.
How hard do you think it is for him? I mean, he was always touted as a phenomenal recruiter when he was at WVU, and obviously he recruits some nice athletes at Marshall. How tough do you think it is for him to, to recruit somebody down there? But before you answer that, we're going to have to take a quick commercial break. But we're going to come back. We're going to address that when we come back. Then we're also going to bring back a couple of guests. We're going to bring back Quincy Wilson and John Pennington from West Virginia State University. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You can do it. You can make it what you want.
West Virginia Sports Connection is brought to you by Subway Development of West Virginia, Greg Hammond, with contribution from Spriggs Distributing Company and Yingling Golden Pilsner.
Welcome back to West Virginia Sports Connection. We're coming to you from Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Charleston, West Virginia. And again, my co-host, Carl Lee, and we are being joined by Quincy Wilson and John Pennington from the West Virginia State University football program, also former WVU greats. Guys, when we went out, we were talking, Carl and I were talking about recruiting. We were talking about how, Doc Holliday, we were talking about Marshall football and recruiting, and how Doc, even in his days at WVU, was a phenomenal recruiter. And I asked Carl, I was like, how do you get people from all over the country to come to Huntington, West Virginia? And, we started talking in the break that, that's a challenge for you guys too. So take it away.
Well, I think recruiting is just about, building relationships. And so, the good thing is that they're all wanting to play football. They're all interested in being successful. And so it's easy to get a conversation going, whether from California or West Virginia. Usually our interests are similar. We love playing the game. We love to compete. We're all high motor, high intensity guys. So it's pretty easy for me. Now, Quincy is a great recruiter. He does a great job for us, and he's just good at forming relationships. It's always been that way.
Is that why I see his Facebook posts all over the place? He's all over the country. Is that what he does? He's actually getting paid to do this?
Yes, and he does a great job. But he's just like that with everybody. And, whether it's my kids or a recruit or anybody, it's just a genuine, feel. And I think when you get that, that's when you get, really good recruits because they can feel that.
Q, how does that work when you're going into a complete stranger's house? I'm assuming you got a bunch of background information on them, and when you go in, they're trusting their kid, their son, to you. They have to buy you, right, before they buy the program.
Right. Well, it's like you said, you have to win mom. You got to win mom or whoever the decision maker is. And like John said, we can be in Alaska, but if we're selling something that they want, you can sell that place like it's gold, So, main thing is earning that trust. Once you're under trust, they're gonna listen to whatever you got to say.
I got a story to that.
I was coming straight to you because you're a former coach and you've had to do a bunch of recruiting.
But I'm going to come from the player's point of view. When I was getting recruited out of high school, I'd gone to Marshall one time before. My first visit to Marshall, and I was like, there was a coach there, and I was like, nah, I'm not interested in this at all. A week later, coach gets fired, Sonny Randall comes in. And he comes in, and the first coach that came to my house was Waverly Brooks. And my mom loved him. He came in and just wooed my mom. So my mom already had me going back to Marshall already, because I'd already said Marshall's out. And I didn't have really anything on the table, but I was like, I didn't want to do Marshall. Then, of course, I meet Sonny, and then that relationship, was perfect. Here was a guy who played receiver in the NFL, and that's where I wanted to go. So that was the perfect mix. So sometimes some situations just perfectly line up. But that point you made about moms, when a coach wins the mom's got as much power over the son as where he's going than most dads do.
Right. So before that, your mom was already like, you need to go to Marshall.
As soon as the Coach Brooks' first visit, he's sitting there, and I don't even know how much he talked to me, but he was talking to my mom, and he was telling my mom about this, and asking her about her stuff and her life and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, guys, are we recruiting? Is this a recruiting trip? Yeah. And by the time he left, the first thing when he walked out the door, the first thing my mom said was, "I really like him. That might be I trust him. I think that could be a good place for you."
Were you a part of that conversation? Or
I
I
was sitting there. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, again, like Quincy said, I think he recruited her first. I think he thought it was important to recruit her than worry about me. And again, because what Coach said, I wanted to play football. And there was no money for me to go anywhere, so I needed a scholarship. So that all the things were lining up. He had what I wanted. Marshall had what I wanted. And then my mom's in love with the guy who's recruiting me. So, it ends up becoming a no-brainer.
Q, what was your recruiting process like?
It was fun. I had a blast with it. My junior year, I got to go to a couple spring games, so I kind of got introduced to what it really was. And
where were some of the places?
Man, took a visit to Purdue, took a visit to Marshall, took a visit to WU, took a visit to Georgia. I went unofficially to Notre Dame, to Northwestern. I enjoyed the recruiting process. I will not lie about that. And I tell kids that. I'm like, don't ever pigeonhole yourself. You know, a lot of these kids, they go 2 places. Oh, that's why I'm in love with this place I'm going. I'm like, you're seeing their best effort. I've never met anybody that's gone somewhere and been like, oh, this place is terrible. Like, you might not like some things about it, but everyone has uniforms, everyone has this, everyone has that. So I tell kids, you know, to get out, go see places, go to camps, go to learn and talk to the guys, because the more information you get, it makes your decision even easier. People would have had problem with their decisions, haven't been anywhere, and they got 2 places to pick from, and I don't know where I'm gonna go. If you've been to enough places, it just makes sense to you.
Why did you choose WVU? What made WVU the choice?
Coach Nealon, I went on my visit, and it was a no-brainer, man. I went there, talked to him. Talked to Coach Dunlap, was one of my recruiters as well. I loved him. Like my mom loved Coach Nealon, loved Coach Dunlap. So when we went on the visit, it just sealed the deal. You know, the recruiting process was, good. But once we went on our official visit, I told him, hey, I'm good to go, man. I'm a Mountaineer.
So you got to have a bunch of fun.
Right.
And then you said, okay, I'm staying home. I'm going to WVU.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty cool. John, what about you, man? How'd that work out for you?
Well, I didn't really get recruited, so it was a little bit different. I kind of recruited myself, kind of begged Coach Nealon to come up there and give me a shot, and so it was a little bit different. I was the recruiter, recruiting them to hopefully give me a chance to be on the team. So I didn't have a whole lot of suitors as far as that goes. I knew I wanted to go to WVU. You know, I was the opposite of Quincy. I didn't have any other interests. I was going to play baseball or football at WVU, and my heart was in football. I really wanted to do that, and at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen in recruiting. You can tell pretty early with a kid where his heart lies, and sometimes even if the mom is all in, it doesn't matter. That kid has his heart set on something. Some kids are kind of open, just looking at everything, but I think a big thing in the recruiting process, and Quincy does such a great job of it, is just being genuine. It's just like you're going on a big date. My dad would tell me, just be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. It's the same thing in recruiting. Just be yourself. They're going to see your passion and your pride for the school and everything that you're all about. And if that's what they like, then they're going to come to West Virginia State. And you recruit so many young men, hundreds, so we don't get too upset about a guy that doesn't come to West Virginia State. It's like, well, then he was meant to go somewhere else and it wouldn't have fit anyway. So for us, it's, just about finding that right connection and that right fit. And, I don't know how many guys we had, 25 to 30 out of 300. So only 10% of them are actually going to sign on the dotted line. So
now, all three of you can speak to this, the coaching profession. Right, they say it's 365. We have a saying. They have a saying here at Adelphia. We're open 365. You guys are open 365. When do you get a break? When is it consistently? Is it everything that you hear about on the news and then on the shows? Is it all consuming your job? And if so, where do you fit your personal life?
You know what? I think it depends on your leader. Your head coach. If you have a guy that's like a Belichick that wants you in there, you're kind of, hey, this is what it is. If you have a more of a looser guy, you kind of find where you go. But we all there's off seasons. We have an off season. There's times here. It may not be 6 months or 3, but it might be 3 weeks here. It might be 2 weeks there. It might be a weekend here. It's just whenever you get your time, you enjoy it.
How did your coaches? How do you talk to your coaches? Were there some that just wanted to say, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Did you ever have to say, you know what? They're giving us another cue. We got to take another commercial break. We'll come right back and talk about that. And we'll talk about all three of your all's playing days, college football right here in the state of West Virginia. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You can do and you can say anything you want. Live your life and I'll live mine any way I want. You can have and you can take anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want. Anything you want, and I want. You can do and you can say anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want.
West Virginia Sports Connection is brought to you by Subway Development of West Virginia, Greg Hammond, with contribution from Spriggs Distributing Company and Yuengling Golden Pilsner.
Welcome back to West Virginia Sports Connection. I am here with my co-host Carl Lee. Quincy Wilson, John Pennington from the West Virginia State University football program. When we went into the break, guys, you were really educating me on the recruiting process and what it was like as a coach, what was it like as a player. And Carl, in the break, we were talking about, or you started talking about a trip to Virginia Tech.
Yes, kind of. It's spinning off of like having, plan. Like some guys got to have a plan. My plan, I just wanted to play on Sunday, and I was just naive enough to assume that it didn't really matter where I went, And so I took a couple trips to Virginia Tech until they said that, they're not going to offer me. I'd have to walk on. So that was impossible. I knew there was no money coming from home, so a scholarship had to happen. I went to Fairmont. I went to Concord, and I like Concord, And I mean, so it didn't really matter. Took 2 trips to Marshall, and all I was looking for was who was going to give me the best chance to play on Sunday. And it was me and a couple of other guys. We were talking about maybe actually deciding to go to Concord.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a dynasty there.
And again, because all I wanted to do was to play, and figuring if I could play, I'd get the chance on Sunday. Well, again, they bring in Sonny Randall, and instantly the first thing I find out is this guy was an All-Pro wide receiver for the St. Louis Cardinals, and I was like, oh, okay, now that's worth it going down there. And that was that was the swing thing for me, was as soon as he came in, I took one trip, sit in his office maybe 5 minutes, and we're shaking hands. Yeah. I got moms all in, and this guy played the position I would be forced to cover. He give me all the information, and and he said to me, he says, so I hear that your ambition is to play on Sunday. And I said, yes. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, here's what I promise you. If you're good enough, I'll at least get you a shot. That was it. I was like, where's the paper? I'm signed.
So he's telling you what your future can look like.
Yes.
You just got to listen to him, and if you have that ability and you can roll, then maybe Sundays are for you.
Having the perfect guy. You guys have your coaches meetings with the players at the end of every year. I'm fortunate enough to end up starting my freshman year, and end up being get a little accolades going along with that. I go in to see him. I'm thinking he's gonna high five me, give me a pound, and tell me, oh, you're on your way.
They don't ever have that.
No. And he's sitting there, and he's looking at me. He says, "Are you satisfied with your year?" I was like, "Yeah, I think it was pretty good, And he said, "Son, how many kids on this team do you think is going to play on Sunday?" I never thought about it. How many guys in this conference, Old Southern Conference, do you think is going to play on Sunday? Didn't think about it. He said, you're not competing in this conference. You're competing against the nation and everybody that plays your position. Changed my whole thought process. And he literally did this to me all the way through to the end of my senior year before he finally said, son, you'll be fine.
So he didn't give you that validation. I mean, that's really just motivation, right? To get you what you want to do, right?
Yes. But I wanted his approval. I wanted him to say that I was that guy. He could already see that I was that guy. But truly, I didn't have the personality that would have been able to handle that. If he'd have told me, son, you're on your way as a freshman, I'd have been done. I wouldn't have been able to handle it. You know what I'm saying? Because here's this all-pro wide receiver that played in the NFL for a ton of years is telling me I'm on my way.
Yeah.
What are you going to say to me? I'm saying, hey, this guy, he's already been there. He
right.
told me, I'm already there. I'm essentially wearing a pro helmet already. So no, he played me perfectly, and I think that's one of the arts of coaching is knowing your players, knowing who you can push, who you can't push, and the idea of treat everybody the same, that's not really possible.
Well, you talked about, is there an off season? And I mean, this is who we are. We're positive leaders. This is what we do. So it's not really a job. That you talked about shaking hands when you committed. How great is that feeling when a recruit tells you, Coach, I want to come play for you, and we're like, welcome to the Yellow Jacket family. There's not a better feeling. So as many times as you get told no, when a family and a young man puts their trust and everything into you, it's just an incredible feeling, and that's kind of what it's all about. That's why it's not really, yeah, there's not really an off season. I mean, your phone's on 24 hours a day and they're always hitting you up. But at the end of the day, you know, that's just who we are. It's what we do. It's not a job. We want to motivate young men. And I'd love to be on the other side of that with Sonny Randall and be able to, you know, motivate a guy like Carl Lee, you know, and him say, well, if he wouldn't have said that, I would have never done this, you know. And so that's an awesome story to hear how he helped motivate.
But I'd make the case that, you know, and I'm a strong supporter of kids going to school wherever they go. And I obviously have a true bias to West Virginia State, and I know these guys, if they call, I come down, if we do camps together, all those kind of things. West Virginia State is one of those really super unique places that you get a feel of being at home. And these guys, you know, even though they're WVU guys, are super great guys and really personable around their players, and they're going to do whatever they can do to make that happen. And for some reason, we have some of our athletes and parents don't want to play in the conference. You know, they think that the kids are better than that. Some might be, but if you don't have a place, you know, if you're not that D1 guy, you know, man, the conference is great football. I mean, it is great football, and when you start looking at resumes, start looking at some of the resumes of some of the coaches, not their wins and losses, but who they are as coaches, what they've accomplished. Because to me, I want to be around the guy. The reason I signed at Marshall, there's a guy there that played pro ball, which is exactly what I want. These guys have done that. And so I'm chasing them because I know they know the actual reality of how you get there.
You know, I want to talk about your playing days for a second. We're going to be out of time pretty soon, so we're going to make this quick. You two, I think you have two iconic plays, I guess, in WVU history, right? You have the catch. I can't even remember who it was against, but you're completely, you know, you're like perpendicular to the ground, and you just, I don't even know how you pulled the ball in. Who was that against?
Pitt,
that's right.
Yeah.
Nobody forgets those plays.
And I mean, you know, that was an iconic thing. And Q, yours obviously is that running play where you just bowled the guy over from Miami, and you know Miami's, oh, it's the U, it's this and that. What do those kind of plays mean to you guys? I mean, because as a fan, you know, our show is premised on I'm a fan, he's a pro. What does it mean to you guys as the players?
in the moment, for me, it was just, I was glad to make a play for our team. You know, that was a big game. And, you know, now looking back on it, it's like, all the hard work that it took to get there, that was great. But in that moment, you just saw the excitement of your teammates. You know, we knew in my particular play, and his too, it was such a momentum shifting play. You know, it changed everything. And so that, for me, it was just, you know, the excitement of the coaches, the fans, the teammates, and it was like, you know, finally, I knew I could do this. You know, I wanted to make a play. Now, Quincy did a lot more of it, you know, and his play was very similar, though. I mean, it was an amazing play, and it just, you know, the excitement. I mean, I'll never forget it. You know, I was lucky to be on the play on the field for that play, and just I didn't block that many people, but I got to watch Quincy run to the end zone and congratulate him. Yeah.
Q, when that, I mean, I know it's bang bang, and it's you know, you don't even really have time to think.
Right.
Do you think, or is it just a reaction? Is it just instinct?
You're playing ball, and Coach Raul was always a stickler about focus and this, and that's how we train. That's just is this next play, and like I said, you do the play, you're good, touchdown. I'm immediately looking at the clock. All right, there's still 2 minutes left, so I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna get too high yet, too high. Then you lose the game, and it's just like, well, we lost, so you almost forget about the play.
All right, well, listen, guys, I want to thank you all for coming down. Will you come back?
Oh, yeah.
It's
yeah,
been
definitely.
a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy.
I love it. I'm glad you're
Always,
here.
baby.
Okay, this has been West Virginia Sports Connection. Join us next time, and thanks for watching.